Hi everyone, so I am Lydia Reynolds, and one of the things I like to do is make dolls and then sell them on Etsy or at craft fairs. So I'm here today to show you all how to make a Pioneer Prairie doll, all by hand, stitched with love. So first thing you want to do is choose your pattern, whether you're choosing a very simple, basic pattern that you can find probably free online. You're going to want to trace it and then cut out the pieces from paper or whatever your pattern pieces are going to be made out of. Cardboard works too. This one I also found on Etsy. Got it at a really good price on Old Road Primitives Etsy shop. It was originally for Raggedy Ann and Andy, but here's its pattern shape, and it's got more pieces to cut out as well. So you want to just take your pattern pieces and cut them out if that's the way you're going to do it, and then you're going to want to put them on top of your material for your doll. I usually use cotton material, but you can also use muslin. That works well as well. So lay your pattern piece out on top of the fabric, and then take a pencil and just trace around each piece. Just right onto the material. Once you have all of your pattern pieces traced, you're going to want to take your sewing scissors and just carefully cut out along the line that you drew out on your fabric. And make sure that you do double of everything. So like for the body piece, I am doing it where my material is layered. It's two layers. So when I cut this out, it's going to make two, because we're going to then stitch this up and stuff it later on. And do that for the legs and the hands as well. So when you're all done cutting it out, it should look kind of something like this, depending upon your pattern shape. But you're going to want double on everything. So 2 different pieces for the legs, and then 2 different pieces for your arms and for your body. Or if the body and arms are connected, then just 2 different pieces for all of that. So at this point, you're ready to pick your face. So do your research, find a face pattern that you like, and then what you're going to do is you're going to try to transfer that right onto your fabric. So what I normally do is, if I have a thin enough fabric, what I do is I put my piece of pattern paper in between the fabric for the doll, and then I will, you can kind of see that face coming through. I will then flatten it where I can clearly see the lines of the face, and then I'll take my pencil and I'll begin to trace that right onto my doll fabric. Or if you're super artsy, you can just draw the face yourself. So at this point, you're ready to start sewing your doll. I usually start with the face, and I get my colored embroidery threads out. So you're going to want to choose your eye color, whether it's brown or blue or green. And then your skin color for nose. And then I usually do for like the girls, if they have circles on their cheeks, I usually do light pink for that and dark pink for the lips. Or if I'm doing a boy pattern, I might have like freckles instead of the blush. And so I might have like kind of a reddish brown freckle color that would go there. So pick your face colors with just whatever embroidery thread you have, and then we'll start sewing. So what you're going to want to do for the face is take the piece of fabric that has the face drawn on it, and take your needle, and you're going to come up starting at the top of the eye. You're going to poke through on one side and then through again on the other side. I'll demonstrate. Start with a knot on the end of your thread. Pick up your fabric, moving from the back to the front. Poke through. Pull it through and poke through the other end and pull it through. Then just keep going back and forth like that until you have the eyes complete. Then tie off your thread with a knot at the back. So turn your fabric over to the back side, and then you're going to want to stick your needle through one or two of the stitches that you've made back here. Pull it through, but not all the way. Then take your needle and come back through that loop you've left, and then pull down tight to form a knot. Then go back over that again. Come through your stitch. Pull until it's almost all the way through, but not quite. And then pick that loop up with your thread, or with your needle, and then pull tight. And then you trim your thread. For the nose, you start with a knot at the back. Moving from the back to the front, you poke through, and you're going to poke through again a little bit above your hole that you made. Kind of make a diagonal line right here. Then make a second line this way, so you have one line coming this way, and then another line coming this way. So you're basically forming a little triangle for the nose, a little pyramid. Then for the cheeks, do the same as with the eyes, poking from the one side, pulling it through, and then you're going to take it and poke on the other side and pull it through again. Then for the mouth, again start with a knot and move from the back to the front, poking through at the far left side. Then begin making stitches along your mouth seam, overlapping your stitches just enough so that there's not too much of a gap in between them. So you come up and over, and then when you come back up, you come back up about there, and then over again. Then once again, we tie a knot in the back and we trim it off with our scissors. And we have our face done. Starting to look cute. Next, we're going to start sewing the pieces together and stuffing them to make the doll. Take regular cotton white sewing thread, and you're going to thread your needle, put a knot at the end of your thread, and then you're going to start sewing around the edges with just a regular straight stitch coming up and down throughout the side. Now what you want to make sure is for your headpiece, you're going to want to turn it inside out. So flip the side with the face sewn on it. You're going to flip that to where it's on the back side with all the knots. And you're going to align that with the other piece. Sew around all the edges, all the way around, but leave the bottom open. So don't sew the bottom closed. And then I'll show you from there what to do. Okay, so now that we've stitched all the way around the doll, leaving the bottom open, we're going to now turn it right side out. So you take the opening and just like a shirt, you're going to just flip it through and keep pulling it through. Until you have it right side out. So there's your doll body. And you're just going to leave it like that for now because later we'll come back and stuff that and close the opening there. But you're going to set that aside, and then you're going to want to do that through all of the rest of these pieces. So you're going to do just what we did with that, a straight stitch all the way along the side here. Follow your arms or your legs if you already did your arms if they're attached to the body, but leave all the tops or bottoms of the arms, leave all of those open. So don't stitch those closed. And then when you get all the way around the edge, flip it inside out or right side out and leave the opening, because then we'll stuff the arms and the legs and stitch them to the body. Okay, so now that we have all of our pieces stitched up and turned right side out, where the seams are inside and everything looks nice and neat, we're going to start stuffing our doll and sewing it together. So take your polyester fiber fill or whatever kind of stuffing you're going to use, and begin putting that into each individual piece until it's nice and puffy. A couple of tips that I have for stuffing your doll is if your doll pattern has a thinner neckline, a more narrow bottleneck here, you're going to want to make sure to stuff that pretty firmly, because I've occasionally stuffed the head and the body but left this area kind of floppy. but then the head tends to just kind of be, you know, flopping. And so make sure to stuff your neck pretty firmly in there so that it can move, but it's not going to naturally, it's going to naturally hold itself up and not naturally crane one way or the other. So that's a tip for thinner necks. And then for your hands and feet, it's best to break off smaller sections of fluff at a time, small pieces at a time, and then work with that so that you can be sure to get all of your corners. And if it's too narrow in there to punch the fluff down in, you can use a stick, which quite often comes with your fiber fill, or you can just use a chopstick. And then sometimes I even use the point of my scissors. Just be careful not to poke through your fabric, but just kind of get in there and work on punching it down into those corners so that your hand is nice and fluffy even in the narrow spots like the thumb and the fingers. Now that we have all of our pieces properly stuffed together, now we're going to start sewing them closed. So what you're going to want to do is take your top, fold over the raw edges inward, just a small portion, and then you're going to whip stitch that. Put your knot on the inside, then pinch the two sides together with the folded seams on the inside and just make whip stitches through all 4 layers. Okay, so now that we have all of our top seams done and everything closed so the stuffing can't get out, we're going to start attaching the limbs to the body. So what you're going to want to do is align your pieces together. If you've got feet, you could either do it where the seam comes like this, so the foot comes out in natural position, or if you want to make it kind of look cute, you can turn it where the feet are facing outward and stitch that to the body. So that's what I'm going to do with this pattern. And for the hands, if they're already attached to the body, there's nothing you need to do with that. But if they come separate in your pattern, you can figure out what works best for you, having them with thumbs up or thumbs down, or having them kind of come from the middle where they're reaching in natural position. And then you're going to attach all of this to the body the same way you closed your holes up with a very simple whip stitch. I'll demonstrate. So once you have the whip stitch complete all the way across the seam, what you're going to want to do, just to make sure it's good and sturdy and tight, you're going to want to come back through all that you just did, kind of making little cross X's, and just poke in and come around the other side. And look at this. We have our doll. But we're not done yet. This little doll needs hair and clothes. On to the next step. Now that we have our doll sewn up, it's time to choose the hair. So you can pick either red or brown or blonde or black, whatever you want. That's going to make your doll hair. And you're going to want to take your yarn ball and begin cutting small strips. And what you want to do is measure, so tuck your yarn behind the doll head and measure approximately the length between the arms. So kind of stretch your arms out where they make a line, and then you're going to want to pull your yarn approximately that length and then cut individual pieces until you want enough pieces where lying flat the doll, it goes slightly above the doll head, because we're going to then take this and kind of bring it to the top. So you want to cut enough strips that can go all the way from the neck to a little bit above the head. Take thread that matches your doll's hair, thread your needle and tie a knot at the end of your thread. Then you're going to turn your doll over to the back side of the head, and you're going to want to do about 3 different strings. If you can get a bunch of 3 different strings out, lay them across the head, starting at the base of the neck, and you're going to want to poke in and just make a little bit of a stitch beneath those strands, because you're going to lay those strands right on top of that stitch, and you're going to come back through just like that to tighten that down. So you're going to want to make sure your strands are flat and even, and just tighten that right up. And you're going to keep doing that, because now you see we've created this little space. So we're ready for our next bunch. So take 3 or 4 strands, lay them down in that space. Take your thread and make a stitch right there. And you're going to want to pass where you had it. Go a little bit beyond the last stitch. so that you've created another space to put your next set of strands in. And just keep on doing that until you get to the top of the head, and hopefully you'll have another couple of bunches where you can kind of just fold them over. Okay, so now that we have our middle seam done, and going all the way over to the front side, now all we have to do is repeat that same thing, doing those kind of loop-de-loop back stitches along each side. So you're going to want to do it along this seam and along that seam. So it should look something like this. Now that we have the hair all done, we're ready to start cutting out the clothes. So lay out your fabric. I've got double-sided, or 2 layers of red fabric. I'm going to make a red dress for the doll. And you're going to want to put the doll on top of the fabric and kind of make sure it's flat. Then all you have to do is kind of picture a dress outline and just cut to a good size for the doll. Starting down below. So now that we have the dress cut out, what you're going to want to do is straight stitch, just like you did with the doll, but straight stitch along this seam, and then your sleeves up top, but leave enough of a hole that you can slit your doll head through there. And you're going to want to put the front side of the fabric together so that it's going to be the back sides of your fabric are going to be on the outside, and that's what you want to sew on so that you can turn it inside out, again just like the doll, and that way all of the seams will be on the inside of the dress, not on the outside. So your seams should look something like this. You can see there's an opening for the head and the arms, and then the bottom is left open as well. So you just turn this right side out and put it on your doll. Alright, so our doll is really coming along now. She has a dress on, yay! But what you're going to want to do with all of the raw edges here for the sleeves and the neckline and the bottom, all the seams you didn't do while sewing up the dress, you're going to want to take those seams and fold in the raw edges, tuck them inside, and then do a straight stitch along that edge to keep that tucked in, so that there won't be any raw edges or way that the dress can unravel itself. So go ahead and do that on all of your open hemlines and sleeve holes and neck hole. Okay, so now that we have all of our hemlines finished, where there's no raw edges showing anywhere, now it's time to start cutting out our apron and our bonnet. So for the apron, I've got white fabric here and double layered. and I'm going to lay it over the doll and just kind of get an idea of what the apron's going to look like here. So we're going to have a wider strip for the bottom, and then we're going to come up and kind of make it narrow for the top. So go ahead and cut that design out. So the apron is going to end up looking something like this. And then as usual, you just straight stitch along all the sides but leave the top open, but go down through all the sides, and you're going to then turn it right side out and straight stitch across the top to close it. You won't stuff it or anything, but that just gives it a good sturdy double layer thickness. And then after that we'll talk about how to put on the ties. Alright, so here is our sewn together apron, no raw edges anywhere. You can see the straight stitch up top. And for the ties, what I did is I used yarn, but if you want something a little sturdier, you can use ribbon. But what I did was I just knotted it at the back of the top of your apron, and then I wrapped it around and diagonally towards the corner after you fold this piece over. And then I did the same with this shoulder, put it at the corner there, and then brought it down to this side, wrapped that around, and then I secured these with a knot after I poked through the fabric. I just used a yarn needle, and probably if you're doing ribbon, that'll work too, although you might have to slit a small hole to put it through there and then tie it, because depending upon how thick your ribbon is, it might not poke through with a normal needle. And then to close it, you can just tie a regular knot and bow right there. And then make sure your ends are always knotted, especially when using yarn, because this will unravel over time. So if you just put a knot at the end, that's going to secure it. But go ahead and do that for a ribbon too, just in case, because ribbons can unravel as well over time. And there's our apron. For the bonnet, what you're going to want to do is lay your doll's head right on top of the material you're going to use for your bonnet, whether it's white or it matches the fabric of the dress, if you have enough of that left over, or if you want just a totally different color. Whatever your fabric choice is, you're going to lay it down and put your doll head right on top of it. And then being careful not to snip any of the hair, you're going to take your scissors and just make a wide arc all the way around the doll's head, leaving plenty of space for sewing. So that's the back, and this is just a single layer. It doesn't have to be doubled. So that's the back of your bonnet. So then for the rest of the bonnet, normally you would do it in the same color. This one I'm doing a different, the flap being a different color than the back of it. But normally out of the same fabric, what you would do is take a double layer and create a second kind of arc shape, and make it big enough so that when it's around the doll's head, you can kind of make it work and make it look like a bonnet top. So that's kind of the measurement you're going for, and again, normally it would be the same fabric as the back of your bonnet, unless you want to do something fancy like what I'm doing right now and mix and match different colors. So to begin sewing the bonnet together, what you're going to want to do is start with your flap piece that's going to go over the head, and so it's the brim of your hat. And what you're going to want to do is put your front sides together again, back sides out, and you're going to trace the arc and straight stitch along the arc of your bonnet. You don't want to do the straight part here. Just go all the way around the arc with a regular straight stitch, and then turn this right side out, and I'll show you from there what to do with it. Okay, so at this point, now that you've got your hat brim or flap done on the inside and you've flipped it out, you're going to attach it to the back of the hat. And normally, again, these would be the same color, same fabric. I'm just doing a different, unique project because I had a specific order that I'm trying to fulfill. So this part is going to get maybe slightly tricky, but if you stuck with me so far, you're an old pro at this and you're going to be fine. What you do is you're going to try to attach this to this. And so you're going to lay it down where it's got the raw edge, the part you didn't sew, is going to be what you're putting along the arc of this piece. So lay it kind of back to back like that, and then you're just going to straight stitch along here. And what eventually is going to happen is we're going to crimp these sides in as we get going to make this part puffy. But I'll get this started so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So after putting your knot in there, you're going to go along that seam, and you're going through all 3 layers. So as long as you have the hat turned where the seams are on the inside here, don't be afraid to have raw edges here, because this is all going to be flipped inside once we get it attached. So that's what's going to be showing right there. So go through all 3 layers, and when you get about here, so kind of where this is starting to curve more deeply along that line, and not quite middle of this piece here, just a little bit on your right, that's when you begin to start pinching this fabric. Oh, and one more note too, you're going to want to start where you leave a little bit of wiggle room on this side as well. So attach this part a little bit higher up. Okay, so then here we start to fold in. So you just take your piece and fold it kind of in a zigzag, bring it up, and then bring it back down. And you're going to sew straight through all of that. So once you kind of have it aligned, keep sewing along this line, that you're going to, as you bring that up, sew straight through all those layers as you continue to go further on. So I've tacked that fold in. I've gone through all of my layers, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fabric and fold it the other way, like that. So instead of lapping it over this way, I'm going to do the same thing but pull it this way and stitch that right along that seam to make a fold there. So now that I have that all tacked down, again going through all of my layers, it's going to start looking a little bit better. You're going to kind of probably at this point see where we're going with this. So then you just keep through the 3 layers, keep stitching along that seam until you get to about that same place on this side. So go about to right there, and then we're going to do another set of folds like we did over here. So now we have our second set of foldovers that we completed, and we marched along to the end. So this is what we've got. Now if you turn this out, it's starting to look a little bit more like a bonnet, right? You've got your nice pleats, the back side, the front side, but what we need to do in order to finish this off is we're going to take this bottom flap, this extra piece that we have over here, and we're going to fold in all the raw edges, and we're going to straight stitch along this whole seam after we get it all folded under. And these stitches can be relatively loose or big, because what we're going to do is before we tie an end knot here, we're going to pull it and kind of make a ripple effect through this whole seam. I'll demonstrate. So we just take the end of our thread and pull it in order to just kind of ripple that seam down. And then you're going to want to measure this to your doll, and when you get it the right size that fits her, just go ahead and secure the knot. So go ahead and put the hat on the doll, try it on for size, and then just pull that strand tight to the length that works best for the doll, where it fits nice and snug but isn't too hard to get on and off. And then you can pop it off and tie that knot. For the bonnet ties, do the same thing that you did with your apron. I used yarn again. You can use ribbon, and you can take your yarn needle and head on in there, poke through, just make sure your ribbon or yarn is knotted securely so it can't pop out, and then just finish it off with knots at the end so that there can't be any unraveling. And there's your bonnet. At this point, your Pioneer Prairie doll is finished. There are a few other details like styling the hair and adding boots that you can play around with and have fun with. So I hope this doll video has been a help to you, and thank you for going on this journey with me.